Hello, everybody, and welcome to another fantastic episode of Truth Wanted. I'm your host, ObjectivelyDan, and this is the live call-in show where we talk about what people believe and why. Friday nights at 7 p.m. Central. This is December 18th, 2020. It is the last live Truth Wanted of 2020. So get your calls in tonight, folks. This is it. This is the last time you can talk to me on air as the year before the year goes by. Every week I have a special guest, and this week's guest is super special. This is Lauren, aka SkepticShe. Lauren, welcome to the show.
How's it going?
Going great. Super excited that you got to be on the last place here. We had actually messaged about you being on earlier this year, and this was back in the summer. And so, like, I'm glad we finally got you back on Truth Wanted. And yeah, Lauren is really, really cool. She makes videos on YouTube about atheism and Christianity and Scientology and a bunch of other stuff. And we were actually just talking before the show about your most recent project, and I was hoping you could talk a bit about that as well.
Yeah, so one kind of more for funsies thing that I do is I read through some Scientology magazines that I got on accident at my old apartment because there was a former or current Scientologist who didn't change their address, so that's fun. But the bigger thing that I've been working on is going through some old high school papers from a class I had called Christian Ethics. And as you can imagine, it's pretty entertaining and embarrassing and fun to share. The most recent one, in fact, the first one I did in what's going to be a series is on abortion. And I had some pretty horrendous arguments in there when I was 17 and writing this paper. So definitely check that out if you're interested.
Yeah, like this kind of started us on this conversation, which I want to bring back and talk about again for the viewers about like the shift in ethics that we had, because like Christianity to me was more than just like a series of propositions that you believed in. Like it was like an ethical system. Like it was implied that you needed to follow these rules for one reason or another because Jesus. I mean, there's a lot of different like theological explanations why, but the point is like you had to do some of these things, and like other churches that didn't follow these rules weren't like the right churches. These were like, this was stuff that like the narratives that I grew up around, and like we were talking about this idea of like what changed in us when we became atheists, because I mean, it obviously like it's a confluence of events that happened in our lives. I think that changed our political leanings and our religious beliefs and our ethical beliefs, but like that was all kind of a package deal. And I'm wondering like how someone's ethics really changes like that after a religious belief switch. And I was curious about your insights from what we were talking about earlier.
Yeah, so this is at least how it happened for me is, in going through the process of deconverting, I was asking myself questions about pretty much everything I held dear and my identity. I was already in that mindset of asking all those questions and putting everything under a microscope. And so as soon as I deconverted from Christianity, that led to this chain reaction of me questioning everything else. I used to be super politically conservative as well, and that pretty much was immediately dismantled. And Dan, I was telling you before that like I think oftentimes, if not all the time, if we're really serious about our faith, it gets pretty heavily intertwined with our political beliefs.
Yeah.
So, and for me, unfortunately, that was on the conservative side.
Right. For me as well.
There's different interpretations, of course. But so as soon as that got dismantled, my Christianity got dismantled, I was like, wait a second. Being queer doesn't seem to be wrong, except for the fact that I was told it was wrong when I believed all of this. So now I don't have to believe that anymore. And, it was this whole string of things. And obviously it's a good thing, but it was terrifying at the time, but I'm glad that I got out of that. And yeah, your ethics in pretty much every area change when you deconvert, in my opinion, if you were serious about it.
Yeah, it's just so bizarre because I don't know. It's a chicken and the egg situation for me. I don't know what really came first. Like, I think I started to shift politically first before I switched religious beliefs, but honestly, it's hard to tell. I mean, they were kind of both happening at the same time. I definitely became more aware of my upbringing once I got to college, going from Waco, Texas to like a different kind of town and meeting all kinds of different people with different experiences and different interpretations of allegedly the same religion that I had. Which was, you know, kind of fascinating to see, because when you encounter these different narratives of who you're supposed to be as a Christian, you have to wonder, well, how do you know which one is true and what method do you use? Of course, like most Christians will say, well, you got to look at the Bible. But hey, like that hasn't stopped people from like murdering each other over different interpretations, right? Like it's not always super clear and set in stone. So yeah, I'm sure you had a similar thing.
Yeah, I was just going to say, I always say there's as many different interpretations of the Bible as there are people who read the Bible.
Yeah.
We've all made it whatever we want it to be, with our own kind of preconceived notions and biases. But yeah, with what you were saying about your political beliefs shifting first, I was telling you about how I had a couple of roommates who were a lot more progressive than me, but they were still Christian. And kind of like decided to experiment with being atheists because they didn't agree with what the church was teaching them about human rights and all of that. So there's a whole number of different paths that can take. And, you know, like I said to you before, I don't think that's a good reason to call yourself an atheist. You can still believe in God and be mad at God.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
yeah, it's so many different ways to get there.
Yeah, I remember feeling like the odd duck out because I never had a problem with evolution growing up. That was kind of
me neither.
Yeah, I before I even really understood what evolution was, I didn't really have a grasp of it until high school, but I didn't have like a problem with it in concept or in theory. It just kind of made sense. And I was also, you know, fairly pro-choice. It wasn't something I really thought about until, you know, more recent years, but like I wasn't against it either. I never was compelled to be like, oh, these people are murdering innocent babies or anything. That wasn't like a narrative I really grew up around. But like I definitely encountered in my teenage and college years other people who felt more strongly about that stuff, mostly against that stuff. Because when I got to college, I actually ended up joining an evangelical ministry, and people from, you know, those kinds of backgrounds don't really like those things. So it kind of made me think about it more, I guess, the fact that these people were in opposition to it, and I just as a base kind of wasn't. But I was opposed to other things like you. I was uncomfortable with the LGBT community. I did like that was just a separate thing from my experience because I grew up as like a straight normal white. I say normal. I like an average American straight white kid experience. You know, like I was pretty typical in that sense, I guess. And I didn't realize what accepting those narratives meant about my relationship with other people and with the queer community as a whole. I didn't realize that even just being passive about it, even if I wasn't like with a sign on the street, you know, actively saying against it, was still causing harm just by being part of that system, you know?
Right.
So
Absolutely.
yeah.
Yeah.
I'm talking a lot there, but point is, we changed. Somehow we changed. And if you folks think that you guys can change us back, if you want to make us Christians, or if you want to ask us about something else, this is Truth Wanted, folks. This is the live call-in show where we want to take your calls. We have a lot of open lines right now, so please call in so that we can talk to you guys. Those of you just joining again, I'm talking to Lauren SkepticShe, who makes great content on YouTube. And you talk about Scientology, which I don't see a lot of other atheist YouTubers talk about. And I'm curious what made you start talking about that.
Yeah. So, like I said, at my old apartment, I just got a bunch of Scientology magazines on accident. And before, I wish I hadn't done this, but you know, the first year or so of me getting them, I would just throw them away. And then I was like, wait a second, I have a YouTube channel now that I'm pretty active on. I'm sure there's some stuff in here that's pretty hilarious and absurd. And so I read through it and I was like, yep, this is worth talking about. And then also, I became a lot more interested in it when I started watching Leah Remini's documentary. Have you seen it?
Yes, I have.
Scientology and Aftermath. Yeah, it's so
Mhm.
good. But when I heard just how horrible it was, I'm like, all right, well, I'll add my voice of, I'll be one of the suppressive persons on the internet. I'm okay with that.
Yeah, I think what strikes me the most about Scientology, what I didn't realize, was just the history of L. Ron Hubbard himself. I think L. Ron Hubbard might be the most successful con man that history has ever known. Honestly, that man just got away
You're
with
not kidding.
so much stuff. It is unbelievable the stuff that he got away with over the
Yeah.
course of his lifetime. But it like, I only know that because I know how to research that kind of thing, and I think that's what happens with people who get into Scientology is they may not know how to access those resources or really think about some of the questions that you and I might think about when they talk to people. There's a Scientology building downtown here in Austin that I haven't been into, but my brother has. Actually, he told me stories about how they did the whole, what do they call it, the testing on him, and it sounded just really bizarre. So I don't know. Very, very strange stuff.
Yeah, and it's scary because even if I'm not going to go into too much detail on this, but like even if you just take one of their like personality tests or just walk in their building, as soon as they have any real information about you, like if they have your first and last name or your address, phone number, whatever, they will hound you like crazy. At least that's what I've heard. So yeah, it's not something to mess around with.
Not a great organization to be a part of, for sure.
Mm-mm.
Yeah, not good for anybody, honestly. Like,
No.
at least if you're a part of a church, sometimes you do like local charity work or something. Like, I don't even think, do Scientologists even do that? Do you know?
They claim that they do. They talk a lot about it in the magazines that I read on my channel, but they take credit for things that they have no business taking credit for. They're like, oh, we helped a bunch of people of color in a different country by handing out pamphlets.
Yeah.
So
yeah, that's great. The best thing you can do for people in need is give them a pamphlet. Absolutely.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Yep. Waste some paper and you've solved everything.
That's it. They just need to hear. I was complaining because I put this on Twitter. There's a guy here in Austin that in the middle of the day goes over to I-35 underneath the bridge with a bullhorn and like preaches at the people struggling with homelessness underneath the bridge there. And I saw this happen one day, and I talked to a guy next to me, and I asked that was at a store I was at, and it was like, is he here all the time? He's like, yes, he's here like every other weekday, like just at around the same time, and goes out there and does this. And what an absolute, what a first of all, trashy thing to do, just straight up trashy thing to do, but also like we have a resurgence in people struggling with homelessness in the city right now because of the crisis. And it's like, you are doing the least amount of help possible right now. Like, not only are you like, it's one thing to actively ignore people. It's another thing to shove your ideology right in their face, right in front of their living space. Like, I cannot imagine a worse thing to do to them besides actively antagonizing them, like physically or something. Like, it's so frustrating. But I don't know if you have
right. And like any other cult, they take advantage of the most vulnerable people. Like, I just learned that they basically recruit prisoners, which is awful. Like, they'll teach Scientology classes in some prisons. I don't know how they get away with it. And then people will get out of prison and end up sucked into Scientology. And it's like, if you leave, they have the I forget what it's called. It's like a no holds barred policy. Someone tell me what it is. I'm forgetting. But basically, they can use your criminal record and everything against you if you try to leave Scientology or speak out against Scientology. So
that's how you have the truth, when people are trying to suppress you from talking about it. Of course, like talking about your experiences, right? That's a surefire way of knowing. But yeah, no, it's, oh gosh, it's awful. It's awful. They're a cult, straight up. Scientologists come at us. I don't care. I would love to talk to a Scientologist. That would make the last show of the year really something memorable. I don't think I've ever, outside of that particular building in Austin. I don't think I've really talked to any before. Do you have any messages from people that talk to you about it since you have started making videos about them?
Like people in Scientology?
Yeah, or just like related to Scientology in any way? Like,
no, but I do have a lot of ex-Scientologists who talk to me because so I got super lucky because somehow, some way, someone on a pretty popular ex-Scientologist board shared one of my videos a while back, and then Mike Rinder shared it, which is
really?
amazing. Yeah. So now
Wow.
Mike Rinder knows who I am. I've sent him a couple of messages and stuff, and so that's super cool. So that's how I got like a bunch of ex-Scientologists to come watch, and then they'll teach me some other things. Like if I say I'm not sure about something that I'm reading in like one of the magazines, they'll be like, "You wouldn't believe it's a lot worse than you think it is, Lauren, and you haven't been in it, and it's a lot worse than you think." And I'm like, "Yep, I believe it."
Oh my gosh. There is a
Yeah.
I got a message from someone here on the crew. Speaking of Mike Render, because the policy you're talking about is fair game policy, and that he's doing that
Yes. Yep.
podcast right now
Thank you.
called Scientology Fair Game. And just a little excerpt of it here is in 1967, the policy titled "Penalties for Lower Conditions." Hubbard wrote that opponents who are fair game may be deprived of property or injured by any means by any Scientologist without any discipline of the Scientologist, may be tricked, sued, or lied to, or destroyed.
Yeah, and
Destroyed.
that's actually what Mike Rinder used to do. I'm sure you saw him talk all about that.
Yeah, yeah,
But it's
yeah.
yeah,
Like
it's terrifying.
it's yeah, because you already want to leave. You already don't think any of this is real, or you feel like your life is threatened, and then they're actively threatening and antagonizing you. I cannot imagine if I left the church, what the people I already got a lot of hate messages and people who were not as kind to me when I came out about this stuff. But like that's just a whole other level. Like I've never felt like my life was threatened. That I can't imagine.
Right. And they'll even make stuff up about you too. Like they'll call your boss and say that you did X, Y, and Z and get you fired, and you can't prove them wrong really, and they're protected because their religion, quote unquote.
Yeah,
It's
yeah,
really bad. And people have warned me, they're like, maybe you should not make videos making fun of Scientology because they can come after you with fair game. But I'm like, I have very little reach. I was never actually a Scientologist, so I don't think I'm much of a threat to them, but I'll keep an eye on it.
I also don't think people realize like how easily it is to get into Scientology, because I think it's like I think people just hear stuff about it and they don't like. I think people have this idea that it's all rich celebrities and stuff, but from
Right.
my understanding of it is that's just not the case for the vast majority. I mean, obviously they do have those sort of upper class people investing into it, but like I saw a documentary earlier this year about kid stars like in Hollywood and stuff, and the mom had mentioned like, yeah, I just I just got this book recently about Scientology because I heard Tom Cruise was into it, and I wanted my kid to be successful, and do what they were doing, and like it's that simple for some people to get into stuff like that,
Yeah,
but,
and I've talked about this too, where they disguise a lot of their program names, or they'll
mm,
like go give a presentation and don't tell like the building or church or whatever where they're presenting that they're part of Scientology. They'll just sneak it in there. So
yeah.
they're really good at like making themselves sound really powerful and awesome, or like they're like corporate business leaders or something. And yeah, that's
Right.
how people get sucked in.
Just like an MLM, honestly. I mean,
Exactly.
it's like Scientology has a really fascinating history too. Again, especially looking at L. Ron Hubbard's. But if you want to look more into that, check out Lauren's channel. She's talked about it quite a bit, and I want to get to calls here in just a second, but we want to again announce the special thing that we're doing this next week for Christmas Day, because next Friday is Christmas Day. We will not be doing a live show, which is why this is going to be the last live show of the year, but we're not doing nothing. We got something here. Some of you guys watched last week know, but we're going to go ahead and play the clip again just so you know what we're talking about. And here we go. That's right, folks. For those of you who are listening to the podcast, you missed that clip, but the Golden Pico Awards are happening next week. The voting for that ends in 2 days on the 20th. But yes, we're doing some of the best and worst calls of the year, some of the best guests of the year. We've got a bunch of different categories, and it's all decided by you guys for voting into the show. So if you want to vote and you haven't done it yet, look for the link for that in the description. It's going to be tiny.cc/thegoldenpicos. We've already filmed most of some of the MC kind of content and stuff, and it's so fun, guys. This is one of the funnest things we've done in a while. I'm really looking forward to having that released to you guys on Christmas Day. So that is my Christmas gift to you, not just mine, but everybody who is on the crew. Pretty much everybody that has ever done anything for Truth Wanted, everybody is pitching in something for this. So it's going to be really awesome. So please check that out when you guys are ready. And now, before we get to calls, I have to thank the patron of the week. Every single week, there is a special patron that gets shouted out. And this patron's name is Anthony Magnabosco, you sly dog. Yeah, Anthony's actually been a patron of the show almost since its inception, ever since like we had a Patreon for it. So Anthony, you got the shout out this week. Thank you so much for donating. And if you would like to donate and make this show awesome, you can do that by going to patreon.com/truthwanted. The money for that helps get equipment and all kinds of other stuff that goes into running a show like this. So thank you guys for all that donate. So with all that out of the way, yeah, Anthony's awesome. He's the best.
Love him. Yep.
Are you ready to take some calls, Lauren?
I am ready. Let's do it.
Cool. We got a couple of interesting calls here. I'm going to start with Mark, since we were just talking about Scientology. Mark's call is related to it. Mark from Pennsylvania, what's going on?
Hi, Mark.
Hello. How are you tonight?
Doing awesome. Life's cool.
Doing well. How are you?
Oh, life is awesome. I'm fine. I just feel that, like, as we discuss Scientology, you know, of all the faiths, and I use that word sparingly, this seems to be the one that, as far as like not paying taxes, it's absolutely ridiculous. You know, I could talk about the Church of Latter-day Saints because that's only 150 years ago. I am willing to concede that with 2,000 years under their belt, Christianity, Judaism, to the same extent, you know, Islam, they've got thousands of years, and you're not going to move that quickly. But Scientology is a series of books, and I love science fiction, don't get me wrong, but you find out how much money they're taking in a time when the country is in the place where it is right now, where we can use every dollar we can for, you know, everyday people, and Scientology gets away with it. And I wonder why, you know, the atheist community can't, like, find someone who's like, we need to sue these people. We need to take them into court. Because talking about, you know, people from another planet and all that stuff that Scientology is much different from, you know, the scriptures. Which,
I mean, honestly, though, in some ways, it's kind of not like, like if you look at Christianity and Judaism, like they talk about like monsters, like the Nephilim, and like angels are like from another realm, kind of. That's kind of like being an alien. I mean, and if you take like their conception of cosmology, like I think it's probable that the Jewish people literally thought that like some of these people were basically coming from the sky. Like, I don't think they came from like another dimension, like we kind of think of as today, but like, I get your point though, Mark. And it is frustrating to see, especially an organization as like negligent and like criminal as Scientology, like not kind of pay their fair share is.
Once you have a couple, not to cut in, but after a few thousand years, it's like, you can't push against us. There's tradition, there's culture, there's family, But when you're talking about Scientology, you're talking about something that was like a made-up group of stories.
Yeah.
Almost in our lifetime. I'm not
Yeah.
that old, but
Yeah.
you know what I mean? When
I get you.
Happened,
there's lots of people that have tried to take legal action against Scientology. You know, like it's not like a brand new conversation for sure, but like as long as they're counted as a religion, they can get away with all the privileges that comes with. Like, and Scientologists do stuff that mega churches do that we don't even think about. Like if you go to a mega church, a lot of them have stores in their churches that you notice, well, you don't have to pay taxes on because they ask for donations for the stuff that they get in the store. Or if it's a really big pastor that they're trying to, if it's a really big pastor that they're trying to push, for example, with what is it, Hillsong and some of these other folks, like if one of them like releases a book, what they'll do is they will take some of that church funds and buy like 10,000 copies of that book so that they can put it on like the New York Times bestseller list and stuff. And then they give those books away to their congregation so that they can write it off on their taxes. Like it's the most craziest stuff that like normal human beings would just never think of, but people who have like these motives in mind would do. So yeah, it is frustrating, Mark. I totally hear you.
I mean, I'm not going to try to fight people who have deep faith in the Catholic/Christian faith or Judaism or Buddhism, but Scientology just came up, like 50 years ago, and it just seems like it got a pass. And what is the benchmark for being able to say we're a nonprofit when we're clearly profiting? And that this is the one of all of them that really gets me, that they slip under the, and that I feel that like if the atheist community really wanted to make an impact, this is the one that you would take up, if that makes any kind of sense.
No, I get you. I mean, like I said, there's been lots of people that have been trying to take these folks down, not just the atheist community, but like I wish sometimes we did kind of make more concerted efforts. I think part of the problem is there's so many, not just Scientology, but there's just so many organizations that do this kind of thing. Like it's hard to just pick on one. And it's not like that they don't have legal resources and stuff too. Like thank goodness for organizations like the FFRF that will take on, separation of church and state cases. But like, as long as folks like Scientologists aren't technically breaking laws, even if they are acting dubious, it's hard to make the case. Because like I said, if they're counted as a church, then they can do a lot. Yeah.
Their tax, operations are definitely dubious. And so it's like, well, what are you doing?
Yeah. And they've been investigating.
Like, I'm not going to.
Yeah, well, Lauren has something to say.
Most of us,
yeah, Mark. I was going to say,
you were a former Christian, and you wouldn't take Christmas away from everyone, and I'm not trying to either, and I'm not trying to say that Buddha didn't speak of, a greater peace with inner, but it just seems like there's this one group of people calling themselves a religion that really should not benefit from it.
I agree. I totally agree, Mark. I want to hear what Lauren has to say.
I won't belabor the point.
Yeah.
I just hope that you saw.
Go ahead,
Mark.
Lauren.
I would just argue that Christianity is pretty much, it's definitely bigger and more powerful than Scientology, and that's why we focus on it more. And most of us who are atheist activists used to be Christian. Christianity has a lot more influence on a lot of people, but I would also say, they have as little of a free pass as Scientology does. I think they're both guilty of a lot of fraud. They should all religions should be paying taxes, like all churches should be paying taxes. So I don't think that, I think Scientology can be worse in an immediate sense in terms of they're being more publicly shamed and exposed like on A&E with Leah Remini's show. So I think it's more obvious to people on the surface that, hey, they're doing all this shady, awful stuff, but so is the Catholic Church, and so are Protestant churches, so are all the, the different Christian denominations, but they are exposed a lot less because people aren't willing to come after them because, like you said, they're super old. A lot of people, most people in the world, especially in the States, are Christian. So a lot fewer people are willing to call them out. And so I think for me personally, I'm always going to be more passionate about, speaking out against the harmful practices and beliefs of Christianity than I am about Scientology. And part of that too is just because I was never directly involved in Scientology, so I don't really have an emotional attachment to it.
I agree with you 100%, Lauren. Like, while the actions of Scientologists are egregious and sometimes, like you said, more directly harmful to individuals, Christianity affects everyone on a systemic level, at least in this country. Like, it affects everyone. Scientology really doesn't affect my life as much as Christianity does, and I'm not a Christian anymore. Like, even if I wasn't talking about this stuff, everyone is affected by it in some way or another, because that is the majority religion in our country. That is what's seen the most favor. That's what most of our elected representatives prescribe themselves as. And so and I think that's the bigger kind of beast to deal with when it comes to the problems that Christianity and the systems it perpetuates does for us. Like, I also agree too, because it's like, we never grew up as Scientologists. We can't speak to it as much. I let ex-Muslim activists come on here, and I will let them give their expertise, because I can read about that stuff all day, but I will never have the lived experiences that they have either. So like, I can't count as an expert to that, or an expert witness at least to that. So yeah, it's frustrating. Scientology makes me mad just as much as anybody else, but I agree. Like, if I had to pick one to like really dedicate my time to, Christianity has to win, because that's going to make the bigger impact on the most amount of people. So Mark, I want to thank you again for calling in to talk about it, because we share, you're preaching to the choir, Mark. We hear you, man. Like, it's frustrating. Laura knows about it, and she's talked a lot about it, but yeah, we have to pick our priorities. Unfortunately, we're only individual people. And I like the wagon I've hitched myself to right now, at least. We'll see if there's a more immediate threat than that, but I don't know.
Absolutely.
I don't know. Yeah. Thank you, Mark. Let's go ahead and go to another caller here. We're going to get to Brian, who's calling in from Oregon. Brian, what's going on?
Hi, Brian.
Testing 1, 2, 3, 4. Can you hear me okay?
I can hear you just fine.
Great.
Oh, terrific. I didn't know, because I have my hearing aid on. So, well, you can always use imprecatory prayer. Christians don't know about that, and that's to pray for your enemy to defeat them.
Yeah, I mean, you can pray for anything, I guess. I don't know. I don't know what the rules are anymore.
Enemies, so that's good. And this is a Christian nation anyway, so the heck with Scientology. Just kidding. Anyway, I called about 9/11. Have you ever heard of it? Yes.
Yeah, definitely heard of 9/11.
Engineers and oh my gosh, there's at least about 40, if not more, that have signed on. And these are not people that are just, high school graduates of a physics class. These are doctors and PhDs and people that know exactly how buildings are working and how they're constructed and what causes them to come down and what doesn't. And I'm wondering if either of you two have investigated or checked out A&E 9/11 Truth. I have no axe to grind one way or the other, except for the fact that I want to know what the truth is. And if you want some truth, that's a good place to try to find out what we can use, because they're saying that the report, obviously, that was given out by the government was false. Mm-hmm. And has anybody actually compared that with the facts that they've got and scientific experiments and things that they've done to show how the buildings and what was left of it they could
it's a definitely
analyzed.
I hear you. It's a touchy subject for sure.
The matter.
It's a touchy subject, and I've done the minimal amount of research at least to like do a show like this one to like know kind of a lot of the talking points, and I know exactly what you're talking about too. This document that goes around that's signed by engineers and stuff like that. I don't want to belabor the point
that much, but I just didn't know how far you've gotten into it.
Yeah,
see it. I had started looking into it, years ago when. Loose Change brought out their first DVD on it, and all that information has been updated since then.
Of course, Loose Change was I don't know if you knew that Alex Jones had a part in that, but a couple of different people had a part in the creation of Loose Change that aren't exactly the most reliable sources. But even that aside, right? Not to poison the well. Right? Alex. He wasn't.
Yeah, I certainly wouldn't think that you want to do that. The show's called Truth Wanted. I mean,
of course, but point is, you will see these things happen every once in a while, where some person who studied in physics or somebody who's an engineer who comes up with these experiments and proofs as saying
I understand.
I will put it. Let me keep talking here, Brian, because I want to make my point here. I'm sorry, I'm gonna have to mute you because I don't want to have to talk over you. But this happens in the flat Earth community as well. Like it's not as big, obviously, because 9/11 is a much more kind of serious and topic of interest to people than the flat Earth stuff. But like you find anybody on Earth with a degree, and they're gonna believe something like somebody out there is going to believe something different from the mainstream. You can always find people that will believe that. And it is true that our government sometimes doesn't always report exactly what happens correctly all the time, and that's true for pretty much any world government ever. Like I don't think I have to prove that in any sense. I think there's enough evidence that sometimes governments lie to their people. That just happens. In this particular instance, there's a lot of factors that play here that the official theory and the official ideas of what exactly happened on the events of 9/11 seem to be the most plausible explanation based on the facts and the data that we know. And go ahead, Lauren. You want to talk about it?
And I think, with all of these different conspiracy theories that have built up over the last 20 or so years around this, I think, the more that we kind of speculate on that, or, admittedly, I'm sure for some people be entertained by all those conspiracy theories, the more we're taking away from the victims and their families of 9/11 and taking the attention away from that. And if you want my opinion, I personally don't think that there's sufficient evidence to believe anything other than what we were told, by the mainstream media and by the government at the time. Like Dan said, do I think that every major organization and every government covers things up? Sure, but I don't have a reason to believe that this was anything other than an attack by a foreign country. And, I have my own issues with how things were handled after the fact, but, I think the event is what we were told it was when it happened.
Yeah. And again, we could talk, there's the problem with talking about 9/11 conspiracy theories in particular is there's a lot to them. There's a dozen different ideas. Some of it was that it was an insurance fraud. Some of it was that it was a precursor to creating a surveillance state. There's a lot of individual rabbit holes that people go and take this, and these communities online obviously have been talking about it for a long time, and it tends to percolate into our modern culture today. But some of it has really dark roots too. Some of it isn't people necessarily trying to figure out the truth, because when you look at some of these theories, you realize, there's anti-Semitism in a lot of this stuff. There is Muslim bigotry in some of this stuff. And I don't mean obviously, we're not super fan. I don't think either of us are super big fans of Islam, but the people who reported this stuff, they just tend to not like brown people. They don't like people who, look different from them. So it can get really messy when you want to know the truth about this stuff, because you meet some people who say that they want the truth, but really they just want to spit their own ideas about this stuff. So when it comes to the 9/11 thing, like there is enough information out there to believe with a reasonable belief that what we know about the situation, what's commonly known about it now, is the truth. But that's all I can talk about it with right now. But anyway, I'll go ahead and end the call there because I don't know where else really to go with that other than that's what I think about it. If anybody else has anything they think they can demonstrate otherwise, I don't know. But that's what it is.
I was just going to quickly add that I think it's just as harmful. The conspiracies about 9/11 or the theories about it are just as harmful as like false flag conspiracy theories, where they say, all mass shootings are fake or staged by the government, things like that. Like all of that falls under that same umbrella, or even conspiracy theories around COVID. Anything involving a mass tragedy like that, if you're just going to go ahead and not believe the victims and their, the surviving victims and their families, what does that say about you? And, if you're not going to believe them, who are you going to believe? If you're not going to trust scientists to tell us about the science behind COVID, for example, who are you going to believe? So yeah, it's really dangerous. And I think really sad. Not to, Brian, if you believe some of that, I'm not like crapping on you, but and this is why, one of the reasons why I wanted to do a show like this in the first place, because we are seeing that harm come about more and more every day in this country. And I think we need to talk about it with a frank face and really look at the facts and use our applications of skepticism that we've used in so many other parts of our life to look at some of the theories that people believe, because it's getting worse. More and more people are believing in conspiracies in this country. We have statistics that demonstrate that. And if you don't believe me off the top of my head, look at the QAnon stuff. Look at how many Americans in this country believe in QAnon and still continue to believe it even after the election stuff. That is a result of a culture of conspiracy theories that has been going on even before the events of 9/11. But you mentioned the false flag attacks and stuff like Sandy Hook and everything like that had real life consequences. The family members of the victims of that attack were harassed on a daily basis, had people come to their houses and gave them phone calls and stuff because they thought that people thought they were faking it. And right. And you're just
scary.
Piling up. Then you're just piling up on the victims. You're adding to the numbers of victims because now you have emotional victims. And then, it's just a whole ugly cycle. And then also, if you're going to believe all these conspiracy theories, I feel like it just eats away at your compassion. Like you're just not able to really feel anything when other people are going through hard times or going through tragedies. So
your empathy is going to be lowered if you think that the person you're talking to is a part of the deep state or is secretly a reptilian, if you're following the David Icke sort of train of thought, or if you think they're a globalist, Hillary Clinton, George Soros types, suddenly they become these arch villains for people. And it's easier to look at it in a black and white sense than it is to take the nuances of what it is, where it's these are people that have probably done bad things, but aren't, the villains from a comic book,
Right. Exactly.
So it is what it is. But let's go ahead and go to our next caller here. I want to talk to Tim calling in from Washington. Hey, Tim, what's going on?
Hey, Dan, how are you?
I'm doing just fine. I don't like talking about the harm that this stuff does to people, but that's part of what the show is sometimes. So yeah, what's going on,
man,
Tim?
I gotta tell you, before I start my thing, I just want to say that, Lauren, I agree 100% with what you said about that last caller, because everything you and Dan said after the call, I agree completely. That is just what you said is truth. I can't disagree with anything that either one of you said. Anyway, my point of my call is, Dan, you know this. I grew up in the Mormon Church and I came out as gay in my late teens to some people, and came out in my early 20s to everyone else, and then became a Christian and got married, and have a daughter and now 2 or 3 grandchildren, and came out again at 38. And so I understand my deconversion happened while I was an ex-gay minister, leading groups, telling guys how to curb their same-sex attractions. I taught the Living Waters program through the Exodus International program ministry to guys and all of that. And all the while, I was also kind of, I hate admitting this, but I was sneaking out to do some stuff on the side, and realizing that I wasn't changing. Reparative therapy doesn't work. I wasn't changing. And that began my deconversion. My stint as an ex-gay minister actually began my deconversion, and it took a few years for me to really realize that I don't believe in any God. I don't believe in supernatural stuff. I'm a practicing druid, but my druidism is more nature driven. It's not woo woo. It's not, when I do anything, it is about focusing on nature. It's about connecting with nature. It's not about expecting magic and all of that stuff. I'm truly an atheist. There's nothing supernatural out there. But when I realized that God wasn't changing me like the church told me that I had to, that's when I realized they ain't a God up there. And if there was, he made me this way, and now he's cursing me, and he's punishing me for being this way.
Right?
Yeah.
If there is a God, there has to be an evil one, because his, version of free will makes us do things that he doesn't want us to do for some reason. He's either, obviously I'm saying all this hypothetically, I don't actually believe there is a God, but this God would either allow bad things to happen or makes bad things happen. Or what's the third thing? There's like a third part to that argument, but basically, there's either no God or an evil God, if you ask me.
Yeah, it's like the Ethereal dilemma, like this idea that if there is, now I can't remember it off the top of my head too, because while we were talking, I did want to read this because I retweeted this, and I think this is something that's actually really pertinent to our conversation. This was posted by Christian Sean McDowell about his recent book. Okay, and so I'm just gonna read the quote here. It says, "My encouragement to young people with same-sex attraction: God loves you deeply. You are made in his image, and he yearns to be in relationship with you. Please know that God's grace extends to you. Yes, you. That you for trusting me." I think it's supposed to say thank you. It says that, but I think it's supposed to say thank you for trusting me as one voice, helping to guide you along your journey of becoming the kind of person God wants you to be. In other words, who you are right now isn't good enough for God. But I'm so glad that you bought my book so that you can be the person that God wants you to be. Because right now, you as a queer person and being okay with that identity isn't okay with God and isn't okay with my ideology and our religion. So that's what's really frustrating, because how many people have been messed up because of that idea right there? Countless people will never truly know the harm.
Right.
Like it's, if I became a Christian again, the first thing I would do is say, okay, we need to fix this right now, because this isn't cool. I don't care what you think the Bible says about this. This is beyond the scriptures right now. This is a problem that we're dealing in our time with real people in the real world. And we're not talking about hypotheticals of what Paul may have said or what Jesus may have said. That, like, we're causing real harm here by our speech. So anyway, just really
tell you, And I'll tell you, honestly, I am still a little messed up, even though I am more focused on who I am, and I'm more comfortable in my own skin. I'm still a little messed up from all of that time. I mean, growing up in the Mormon Church, hearing that same-sex attractions were wrong, and then being fundamentalist Pentecostal, and knowing that I had to give up my entire life and deny who I was for those almost 17 years, and then teach others to do the very same thing. I mean, I'm as guilty as the rest of them for doing that, and I mean, you know, I'm messed up, dude. But I, you know, I'm more comfortable in my skin. I understand who I am. I know who I am as a human being, and it makes me love people all the more. And it also makes me realize that, because we always used to use the word lifestyle, right? Because, we were against the gay lifestyle. Well, lifestyle is a choice. It's a choice that one makes. And Christianity is a choice that one makes. So Christianity is a lifestyle. And so I
go ahead, Lauren.
Oh,
go ahead.
I'm gonna cut you off, Tim, real quick, and just play devil's advocate, I guess, because we all know that all atheists worship Satan, so got to be his advocate.
Right.
Right. There you go.
I was I forgot what was the last thing you said.
I think you're talking about lifestyle being a choice, Lauren, because I think you were going to
So I was going to say, I would argue that both, well, I guess neither, being gay, you know, being queer, you know, in any sense, or being religious is a choice. I don't think either are choices. I don't think any of what we believe is a choice. But continue.
I want to echo that real quick though, because I agree with you, Lauren. I think we tend to make this mistake that sometimes, like, you know, I think we were victims of an ideology that was beyond us at a time before we could fully comprehend and understand the consequences of our actions. I don't think we fully understood the history and context of what it meant to profess the beliefs that we had. So I in the same sense that I don't think it's a choice for me to be an atheist because of the understanding that I have of the world and what I think that word means. I don't necessarily hold it against a Christian that thinks that they can't be other than being a Christian, because that's how they understand and interpret the world too.
But I do think at the same time it doesn't take away responsibility from them, you know, for their actions. Don't
think that's true either. Yeah, exactly. But go ahead, Tim.
I get that because that's where you're talking about free will. So you're putting free will in that conversation, and that makes perfect sense when you add the fact that free will isn't really free will if you talk to certain philosophers. So yeah, I get that part of it. That's right. So yeah, lifestyle is more like a lifestyle choice is more like being a teacher or being a hairdresser, like I am, because I want to perpetuate the stereotype, or you know, something like that. So yeah, I get what you two are saying as far as being a Christian goes as well. So yeah, that all makes sense.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, because like we
appreciate you sharing all this with us, Tim, by the way, this is not an easy thing to talk about, so thank you.
I know. Yeah, Tim is great. Tim's called into the show before, and his experiences just blow me away every time. I'm so glad you exist, Tim, and I'm so glad you know that this show exists so you can call into it, because it makes me remember the privilege that I have of growing up as a straight person, because I've never had to have the kind of discrimination and the kind of inner thoughts and inner judgment that queer people in our community have had. And I'm reminded of that every time I'm told of these stories. And I hope that I can convince other straight people that these are the stories that we need to be listening to, so that we can be the best allies that we can, so that we can stop this cycle from happening and make sure that a generation that comes after us does not have to deal with the bullshit that you guys had. So yeah, absolutely. Tim, thanks so much for calling in. I really appreciate it. We're going to go ahead and get to another caller here, but you're really awesome. And take care. Love hearing from you, Tim. Awesome guy. Cool guy.
Hi, Tim. Thank you.
Yeah, that makes me, just makes me feel a lot of feels when I hear stories like Tim's.
Right.
You know, makes me feel a lot.
Yeah.
Let's go ahead and get to our next caller here. We're going to talk to Joe calling in from Indiana. Joe, what's going on?
Indiana Joe's.
I like that. Joe, you there? Joe, can you hear us one more time? Hello.
Oh, hello. My bad.
Hey, there we go. I almost hung up on you there, Joe. Really glad you got to us. What's going on?
I'm sitting here talking to myself like, man, how y'all doing?
We're doing all right.
Doing well.
Yeah.
Cool. Yeah. So I was just calling. I just wanted to get your quick take. Honestly, it was probably a short call because honestly, my ignorance kind of fuels my nervousness about this. But I just kind of wanted to know what you thought about this whole vaccine because with the few of them that are coming out, what's making, because I'm not an anti-vaxxer by any means. I mean, for fuck's sakes, vaccinate your children. But this vaccine is what makes me so sure about the other vaccines that we have is just the longevity of testing that we've had to show the long-term effects of certain things, of how it'll react, all those sorts of whatever, side effects may happen. We know by and large, okay, this is going to happen one way or something's going to happen. This may or may not happen with these vaccines, whatever. With this, it doesn't seem like we have we know anything about like the long-term effects on it. So those sorts of things make me nervous, make me sort of not want to take it, because it's like, man, what might happen 10 years down the line with this vaccine that we aren't sure of,
Yeah.
So I was just kind of curious what your take on it was with this whole vaccine. Are you going to take it? Are you guys, are you like jumping at the bit? Or because I can't imagine that I'm like the only person that has this sort of.
You're not.
About it.
I'll tell you this, Joe. I literally had a conversation with a coworker about this yesterday who told me straight up that they don't want to take the vaccine. And it's because of the exact fears that you're expressing. Now, they're probably not as skeptical as you are, Joe, in terms of, really thinking about their reasons why. But there's a couple of things to know when it comes to the vaccine. First of all, we do get new vaccines every year, and sometimes they don't work as intended, or they're not as effective as we'd want them to be, because a lot of the vaccines that we get are in predictions of the next like flu seasons and stuff. That's what we're thinking. Some of them are more specific, like polio, where we know their effectiveness and stuff like that. So we're dealing with a coronavirus mutation. And so they've done the testing for it, and they're going to continue tracking the potential side effects and stuff even after this is released. It's not like they're just going to release it out into the world.
Oh, sure.
But 10 years down the line, if there's something that comes from this and we don't know about it, I'm not an epidemiologist. I can't tell you the ins and outs of how that might work in the real world. I can only address what current fears people have about it, and some people think that there's effects from taking it right now. There's a conspiracy going around specifically about how 6 of the people in the initial tests experienced adverse side effects during the trials. What people don't realize is 4 of the people in those groups were placebo, and the other 2 one had like an injury recently that they were experiencing, and the other person had like a heart attack like 3 years later, but they had a history of other symptoms and stuff. Like it makes the reason why we track, like when you go to the doctor and you say, oh, you're complaining about this, and this, when you're taking stuff, like they take all that information into account when they're doing these kinds of trials and stuff as well. And so that's why that information gets out there. But yeah, I can't answer the question is this going to affect us in 10 years? I don't think so. I really don't think so, because like the way that they're testing for this vaccine, from my understanding and from my knowledge, and again, I have no relevant expertise in the field whatsoever, but I don't think it's going to be anything.
That's what I'm saying.
Yeah, I don't think it's going to be any different from what we see when we get vaccines, like with the flu and everything else. But again, I couldn't tell you the difference. I will say this: I do plan on getting it as soon as it comes available to me. So I've been talking a lot, though, Lauren. I want to get your take.
No worries. Yeah, Joe, I am definitely going to get the vaccine as soon as it becomes available to people in whatever category I'm in. And I think, it's like I said before, I don't know if you were listening to the first half of the show, but when we were talking about conspiracy theories around tragedies, I think we have to believe what the experts are telling us, believe, what informed media outlets are telling us, what scientists, of course, are telling us.
Absolutely.
And I trust that, if the FDA let this go through, we can trust that they're not, trying to harm, they're not going to allow millions and millions of people, hundreds of millions of people to get to be harmed and have long-term effects like that. And I completely understand your reservations because this did get pushed through so fast. We hear a lot of people say normally a process like this would take anywhere from 2 to 5 to even 10 years, and this is just not normal. But we're not in normal times, and they've been really aggressively and with a ton of people working on researching this and getting all the testing done that they need to push this through at a record pace. So even though it seems concerning, that doesn't mean that it's less valid than other vaccines that have been around for a while. And I'm going to recommend something to you. There's a really awesome Instagram account. I don't know if you're on Instagram, but I would still recommend maybe set one up and go check this person out. She is called Laurel Bristow, and she has an account called King Gutter Baby. I know it's a ridiculous username, but I love it. But she is actually a COVID researcher. What's that? She's actually
cool name.
She's a COVID researcher as her job, and she does these wonderful Instagram stories debunking all of the conspiracy theories and responding to all of the fears around the vaccine. And her ultimate conclusion is that getting COVID is a lot more dangerous and has a lot more long-term effects than getting a vaccine is. And the most you're likely to experience from getting a vaccine is the same effects you would from anything else, like if you're allergic to latex or whatever. So definitely check her out, because like Dan said, we're not experts, but I trust the experts, and I'm definitely gonna get it ASAP.
Mm-hmm.
Man, I do too. I that's what I'm saying. I'm gonna get it, but still, I just can't help that apprehension, because I trust what the scientists are saying about this thing.
I think
people, that little bit of information that we can't say that we know yet is that long-term effects that I think just makes me the most scared. So neither one of you really have any sort of apprehensions about it, and pretty much it's because of just the trust that you have.
Here's what I do know.
Don't get COVID.
Yeah.
Don't get COVID. That's a lot worse.
The Pfizer vaccine, I believe.
Right. Yeah.
I don't want to be wrong about this, but a lot of conversation that's been happening about the techniques with the vaccines is they've had some new DNA based kind of obviously I don't know the technical term.
mRNA, mRNA ain't it called?
My understanding is that there's a viral component that your cells actually reproduce part of the virus in making it, and it's kind of a newer technique that they haven't done before. I can't recall if the Pfizer vaccine is one of the newer techniques or not, but there's a couple of different ways in which they do it. Obviously, every vaccine's a bit different, and there's different methods by which they create them. But I don't want to misspeak and give any misinformation, so I won't comment on that. I guess what I will say is everything that I've seen about the Pfizer vaccine, specifically with what they've released about the trials and stuff and the phase of testing. It doesn't seem, I haven't read any serious commentary on it from any noteworthy expert that has said that this is anything to be a cause of alarm. And in this case, I am going to trust the experts. And maybe does that make me a sheeple? I don't know, maybe. But I can at least talk about this more competently than the other people that are really scared about this, right? The ones that are saying, no, we don't want to do this because big pharma is out to make money off of this. And it's that's whatever. Right?
Yeah, some garbage.
Yeah. Yeah, but no,
Yeah,
it's,
I really appreciate what y'all had to say. Oh, I'm sorry.
Oh, I was just saying, check out King Gutter Baby on Instagram for sure. She actually just did a story debunking the fears around DNA alteration with the vaccine. So check her out. Not sponsored.
Cool, I will. Cool. I really appreciate y'all. Like I said, I didn't figure y'all had the answers, but man, I'm going to do some more research on it. Hopefully that'll, over time, as we get more available, that we'll have a better understanding. I'll have a better understanding.
Let me ask you this,
but I really appreciate y'all taking my, go ahead. Yeah.
Isn't it interesting that, because I know the reason why, it's because you said, yeah, we've researched this faster than other vaccines, but isn't it interesting that for pretty much my entire life, I don't know, I've never heard in casual conversation anybody being worried about next year's flu vaccine. I just think that's kind of interesting that we're hearing about this now all the time, and suddenly everybody is worried about this. Like that's
a great point.
And that's not to say that people shouldn't be skeptical about the things they put into their bodies. I just want to make sure that people are doing their skepticism right. I think that's kind of a problem that we have. It's not I don't feel that anybody should have a sense of shame for feeling something differently that, mainstream authorities are telling them, but to be skeptical and then to just leave it at skepticism and just keep that skepticism an unwarranted amount of skepticism, right? Like, that's also equally epistemically irresponsible. Just like the people that say 9/11 happened because, there's all these suspicious things, but like, we also know some facts about things that just make more sense anyway. So anyway, that's a mini rant, but I appreciate you calling in about this show. I appreciate you being honest about your apprehension, because we're living in some different times. So, it's good to talk.
For sure, man. Yeah, man, y'all too. I really appreciate you taking my call. I'll be listening to the rest of the show. Appreciate you.
Appreciate you, Joe. You take care. Have a great rest of your night. We have some open lines, folks. So if you want to get a call in real quick before the end of the show, now's your chance to do it. This is the last live call-in show, Truth Wanted show, I should say, of 2020. And Lauren is a great guest that you want to talk to. But yeah,
I'm just thrilling. You're gonna have the most fun of your life if you call me. Please do.
Please do. Yeah, but oh gosh, what a year it has been, Lauren. I gotta say, now that we're going into the new year, and now that we're going into a country that's going to be different, I feel like this show is almost. I feel more of a duty to do this show now than I used to. The world has changed since I started this show, even because of a call that we just got right there. That wasn't a topic of conversation 2 years ago. Like I said, we're talking about these kinds of things way more often in the mainstream consciousness. And I have been studying my butt off, trying to figure out why, trying to figure out what's going on. And I am just as lost as the other people looking into this and figuring out why is the country has changed. Obviously, I have ideas about the way we communicate and the way that information is disseminated on the internet, and how the publication of sources is now available to everybody, and not just certain gatekeepers like we had in the past. But yeah, I don't know how do you feel now going into 2021, about all of this and what we're doing as activists, right?
Yeah, I think it's super important. And I agree with you that it's really scary. We've talked about several different conspiracy theories that are pretty rampant right now and have been for a while. I know we can't get into politics too much here, but even if you look at what's going on politically for the last several years, that's kind of given more people a voice who may have some more dangerous understandings of reality, or no understanding of reality at all. And then they're given more of a platform to speak on that and spread that message and make other people feel like it's okay. So yeah, it's really scary. And I'm hoping that at least in the States, with a change of administration and the vaccine and everything, I'm hoping that things will settle down a little bit. But I also think there's a lot of permanent damage that's been done this year with the pandemic, with politics, so many different things.
You want to know what's sad, Lauren? I'm not as optimistic as you are. There are more supporters of QAnon in the House of Representatives right now than there are African Americans. We've reached
that's
that
true,
point.
and that's true.
Yeah, like this thing I've been ranting about and telling people, like, oh, hey, we need to look at this. Now suddenly they're elected members of Congress. Like, and like, I that's not going to go away. They are going to serve their terms, and even if they change their minds on things, the damage is done. People are freaking out. It's not the same country that we used to live in. It used to be that people that believed in the wild stuff were the people that we didn't interact with too often, and when they did, they were in specific confined circles that were a little more, located away from the mainstream. Like, you knew if you were looking at something that wasn't true because it came from a very specific source, like InfoWars or something like that. But now with Facebook and Twitter and our feeds getting mingled with everything else, you have to be on your guard 100% of the time. 100% of the time.
Yeah. And there's no clear answer. Everyone's like, oh, just blame Mark Zuckerberg because Facebook got bigger than he could handle. And how can he possibly take all the misinformation off the internet? And he's afraid of being accused of having, people having their free speech violated and all this. But I don't think it's that simple to just change how things are on social media. In fact, I don't really think it's possible to curb that in the way that it needs to be curbed. So yeah, I don't really have a black and white answer, but I think one really important thing that we can do, at least as individuals and with our own channels, is continue to have compassion and empathy for people, because I think people are a lot less willing to listen and have their minds changed and shed some of those more harmful beliefs and conspiracy theories if they feel like they're being attacked and they feel defensive all the time. I love to watch a good debate. I find it entertaining. I like to watch Matt and others on the Atheist Experience get pissed off at people. Like, it's entertaining. For all of us it is. And there's genuine reason to be angry at people with some of those mindsets. But I really think, like I said, we have to have more patience and compassion and a willingness to listen to each other, or we're not going to make any progress.
I agree. And I wonder, though, do you like those who the ones that we want to convince of the truth the most? I wonder if their compassion is shrinking for the rest of us, the ones who hold the values that we hold. And I think that's kind of happening too, because I think like the distrust that people have of sort of mainstream institutions of information, not just news. It's the CDC, the presidency, everything, right? Like everything has been rotted in some way or another. Like that's affecting our relationships with talking to people as well. And just that distrust, because suddenly, Lauren, you and we're a part of the establishment now. Like we might be the bad guys. The only time I've ever seen somebody call me a shill was when I was trying to debunk flat earth stuff. But I imagine people will talk about it more. I mean, like, that's just it's gonna get, I feel like it's gonna get more black and white. I don't know. It just seems to be that's the trend. But
yeah, I mean, you could very well be right. That's the trend doesn't seem to be diminishing in any sense of the word. But I think, like, at the very least, we can do all that we can, like I said, as individual activists, and listen and ask questions. But you're totally right that we can have compassion for days and listen for days. But a lot of folks who are so deeply entrenched in some really toxic mindsets are not going to listen to us, even if we're listening to them. And they're just going to try to find things that comfort them and like reinforce their own harmful beliefs. So you're right. It could very well just get louder and louder and harder to communicate with people. I just am kind of the mindset, like, I don't want to add fuel to the fire, unless I feel like being sassy on my channel. But you know, in a one-on-one conversation, I like Magna Bosco's approach the best, asking lots of questions. And I think that's the best way to potentially get people to change their minds. But
I do
unfortunately, a lot of people don't.
I do too, and I don't always practice it either. I get frustrated just like anybody else. I'd like to think I'm more patient than the average person, but like I don't know. Like it comes to a point sometimes, it gets frustrating, especially when it feels like we're on the losing side of things overall. That's what it's felt like for a little while now for me. But you're right. We can't give up hope, because you know what? Like, you and I were part of the other side, quote unquote, just a few years ago, and we changed our minds. And I don't think I'm particularly smarter than the average person. I really don't. And I don't know how you feel about yourself, but like, I do think that regular, normal people can think through this and can get through this, but they do need the help. And it's not just going to be from like, stuff that they see on Twitter. Sometimes it's probably going to have to come from conversations like the ones that we're trying to have every day. I think that one-on-one conversation is the most effective thing we can have.
Absolutely.
But we got one more caller here on the line, and this might be the last call we take in 2020. So let's see if that turns out to be the case. We got Lawson calling in from Minnesota. Lawson, what's going on?
Hey, Dan, how you doing? And is it Lauren?
Yes.
Yep,
Lauren is on the line.
Hi, Dan.
Hey.
You're not Dan.
Hey,
Lawson.
I love your show. I was just making some maybe possibly snide comments in the comment section, and I was told I should call in. So I'm not really rude, though.
Oh, no.
Might think so based on my comments, but I'm not rude, I promise.
Okay. What's up? What do you got?
Well, my problem is in today's day and age, I just don't know what to believe. You know what I mean? There's too many sources, and there's too many possible confirmation bias and too many conflicts of interest, and it's so frustrating because, I mean, I'm not an anti-vaxxer or anything, but I've never taken one either, and it's just so hard to trust the establishment, I guess, the easiest way to say it.
Yeah, I get that. And I want to say first, and then I want to let Lauren talk about this. I'll tell you that I didn't understand how news actually worked until I went to college and I started taking media courses. And I got like a firsthand understanding from one professor that worked in news and other professors that have worked in media of some kind that actually demonstrated to me, oh, this is how people get this information. And here's the ethics and standards of practice that people in news work towards to getting that information. And a lot of people don't realize how much work actually goes into making sure the effort that they get that goes into those stories. Like John Green talks about how when he was interviewed for like a really short segment for NPR, that they asked him questions for over an hour just to confirm background information, stuff that didn't even make it into the story for his like particular piece that they talked about, just because NPR is an institution that in general does a very great job at doing what they do, which is collecting news. And of course, not every news source is going to be as good or as studious, or does it mean that they don't have people that sometimes just have a bad day and maybe fudge a detail or two. But that being said, that doesn't mean that it's all bunk, that it's all bad, that there's nothing we can do. There's certainly a gradient. I'd rather trust any news story from NPR than from InfoWars any day of the week, because I know how InfoWars works, and I know the people that write those articles, and they are just simply not reliable based on their case record and history. Unfortunately, that does mean that in the day and age we live now, we do have to research our news more, and you cannot just share an article without reading it. You just cannot. But that being said, I am blessed with having the a background in kind of understanding that, and other people don't. And I get why people are frustrated. It's like I hope I can impart at least some of that knowledge, because sometimes I read stuff and I think something's true, and I realize, oh shoot, this actually isn't reliable either. But I use the methods that I've come across and the ideas I know of what to look for to kind of suss that out. So I talked for a while there. Lauren, I want to hear your take.
Yeah, Dan, you're absolutely right that the onus is a lot more on readers and consumers of the news now.
Yeah.
In fact, I studied just as a minor, but even just the few classes I took really helped me understand that there is no such thing as news without bias. It's going to happen as long as human beings or AI created by human beings is producing the news. It's impossible for it to be unbiased. So there's a lot of great resources. There's websites where you can actually have a bunch of different tabs with different news sources with the same article, like the same topic, but you can see how they each spin it. And I always recommend to people, if they're feeling untrusting of the media, look at multiple different sources, even ones that you're prone to disagree with, and see if there's fact checking on that and see if you can compare and contrast in that sense. And there's also this awesome website. I can look it up.
Are you going to mention All Sides?
Yeah, there's this really awesome website that has this graph of liberal and conservative bias and which ones are most fact-based and which ones are mostly opinion. And it's awesome.
I could be wrong, but I think you're talking about allsides.com. Allsides.com has great stuff on that. And there's also some websites that can tell you, which sources can have biases and what to look for and stuff like that. But even beyond that, I would say that you can live with hope and knowing that there are people in journalism and who are doing the jobs they're doing that want to tell these stories in a professional and good way. Like I get that it's hard because we see all the bad, but there are people that are trying to do good work and are trying to do this and feel just as frustrated in the system that they're in as you and I are, but are doing the best that they can to change it as well. I had another point I was going to make there, but go ahead. I can't remember what it was.
Lawson, is there another part? Because you said you're kind of distrustful of the establishment as a whole. Is there something else besides the media that you're especially concerned about?
Well, I mean, obviously nobody really trusts the government fully, but, I used to be really, really big into conspiracies. It was like, you couldn't get me to shut up about it. This was like 10 years ago, but since I think I've matured, but there's still some like remnants of cynicism within me. And I don't know. I don't like the censorship I see as well. I mean, like I think it was Facebook just said like they're only going to have verified facts on now or something to that nature. And I don't see how they're going to accomplish that. But it just kind of to me says, hey, we're just going to not put on what we don't. You know what I mean?
Yes. And like, I see what you mean in that there's a fact checker going on there that is going to prevent certain sources of information going on. Like we don't like censorship like as a whole, and that's totally fair. I think what Facebook is specifically doing with that, I think it's something I could be wrong with this. What Twitter has done is they have the little notifications that say, hey, like this is, this is a questionable source, so they'll do the fact check. I know they banned some specific ones. I know they banned specific QAnon ones. And I get like on the face of that, that's kind of disheartening, but like that fact checking has already been happening in the news publications themselves, even before it's going on your social media feed anyway. I think that there's been a lot of debate about like, what is the role that social media is going to play? How come big tech has already taken over? Well, I mean, guess what? The news companies themselves are already going through this stuff. Like they have their own editors and they have their own people that are checking this out before they put it out there. And I am personally I'm not as wary as some people when it comes to stuff like Facebook doing these fact checker stuff, because everything I've seen, it's always been stuff that you've always been should have worked out for. I don't think there's anything. Well, I have yet to see any evidence of a story, like a legitimate story that has been completely, shut down because of Facebook. But I'm not discounting that the possibility could happen either. But I haven't seen that to be the case yet. So I don't know.
Yeah, or like on Twitter, they'll flag
Facebook is a publisher.
On Twitter, they'll flag a bunch of tweets that are conspiracy level,
Yeah.
mostly he who shall not be named tweets.
Mhm.
And, they'll flag all his tweets, but then they'll actually post links to factual information, or like if anyone says the word COVID on like YouTube or Instagram, stuff like that, they'll post links to CDC guidelines and information. So in that sense, they're not really taking information away as they are providing bird information and hoping that people look at that side of it.
Yeah, you had said something earlier, Lawson, but I couldn't quite hear you.
Well,
Yeah, sorry about that.
That they need to decide if they are a publisher or a platform. I mean, that's the $1 million question right now, isn't it?
Yeah. It is. This is something that we should have been talking about years ago. What we are talking about now, because like Facebook has already caused harm. It has caused literal genocides in the world. A lot of people don't realize that, but you could look at the history on that, specifically in the countries that it's affected, and the political sort of regimes that have been overturned because of Facebook groups. Like there's a lot of history to it that we are still learning the full effects of. So like something has to be done. That's my take on it, at least. As it exists currently, it is dangerous. The reason why QAnon is as big as it is now is because of Facebook. I'm fully convinced of that. Facebook more so than any other specific social media platform, because we see the most active participation in QAnon coming from Facebook and Twitter to some extent. But Twitter took measures much earlier than Facebook did to sort of curb that. And if Facebook had taken measures earlier, then we probably wouldn't have seen it. Ironically, the people that took the fastest measures when it came to QAnon was 4chan, which is where QAnon started. 4chan was the first place, as far as I'm aware of, to kick all like QAnon stuff off, which they eventually went over to 8chan and stuff. But like that was probably the best thing that they could have done. Like, even though they were the ones that started it, but other social media places didn't take to it as fast, either because they didn't take it as seriously, or because we have this idea that every single person should have a voice. And, well, obviously I agree to that to a logical extent. I also realize I do not want to see InfoWars in the same place as NPR. Like we're saying, they do not occupy the same category because the quality of information they produce is not the same. And we shouldn't put them next to each other and pretend like they're the same and pretend like they are giving us the same quality of information, because they're just not. It's just a fact that they're not. And it can be repeatedly demonstrated. So.
Right. And the Constitution doesn't protect people's right to be an asshole.
Yeah.
It doesn't protect their right to take away other people's rights. Yeah.
Yeah.
No, it does.
I would say
to a degree.
You can be an asshole, but like that doesn't mean like it's the fire in a theater thing going all over again. It's the social responsibility of speech. I, for one, do agree with the idea that we have a social responsibility with our speech. I think doing this show on Truth Wanted, I have a social responsibility with my speech, and I would expect the same out of every single other content creator on this platform. And I don't mind holding myself to that standard. The question is, should we hold everybody to that standard on the platforms we publish? I mean, I think so. I think there should be some standards, and I'm totally fine if what Facebook's doing is meaning kicking like folks like the QAnon stuff off, because that's just caused irreparable harm. And
Yeah, I understand.
Yeah, but
I guess everyone just has I guess everyone just has their own line of where free speech ends. Like, I want people to be able to say anything they want, as long as they're not like telling the public how to synthesize anthrax or something. So I guess. Yeah. And unfortunately, like the Pizzagate stuff, man, like look what that did for the families at their homes and stuff like that was also spread by social media and stuff. And what good came about people having their free speech in that situation? I can't imagine anything good came from that. So I think there are some clear-cut cases. Yeah. It may not be clear-cut every single time. And I'll be the first to admit, I don't have an exact legal definition of what exactly these platforms need to do, but I have no problem with implementing something, because we're living in a time where nothing has been the status quo for a long time, and this is the result.
and here we are. So anyway,
Yeah.
a lot of feelings about this, but I'm so glad you called, Lawson, because this is something I think about a lot. So, yeah, really cool.
Your video with Anthony from back in the day. That's how I got on your show. So
yeah. And speaking of which, I don't know if I have permission to announce this yet, but you may see Anthony again pretty soon next year. I don't know. Cool. Maybe we'll figure something out. Until then, thanks so much for calling, Lawson. Appreciate it. And I think that's going to be the last call of Truth Wanted in the year of our Lord 2020. I don't know why I said year of our Lord. This is an atheist show, but whatever. Lauren,
the Dark Lord.
The Lord of Levels, Vern. Shout outs to our audio engineer. But yeah, this show has been really awesome to do. Thank you guys so much for tuning in 2020. I really appreciate it. And remember, it's not over yet. Next week, we are putting something out there. We're going to do those awards for the Golden Picos. So please vote on those if you haven't already. I'm so excited to do that with you guys. And we may or may not have a surprise or two for New Year's as well. But I guess you'll have to wait and see. Lauren, thanks so much for being on this show. Where can people find you at?
Well, Dan, thanks so much for having me. This has been a lot of fun. You can find me on YouTube. I'm just at SkepticShe. I'm on Twitter at SkepticShe, and I am on Instagram at SkepticSheYT. And I'm sure all those links are down below.
Yes, we got them on screen there. And if you're listening at home, of course, we have them in the description. And we are going to go on the Discord right after the show. So if you're watching live, come chat with us, because this is going to be the last time you get to do it, at least for this year, right? Really fun stuff. Lauren, thanks so much again for being on. This is, of course, lovely having you. This is, of course, Truth Wanted. This is live every week, Fridays at 7 p.m. Central Time. There's a couple of different ways you can help support the show. You can like and subscribe on Facebook and leave a comment. They're very much appreciated. You can also find the show on iTunes, Spotify, and wherever else you might get your podcast. Please leave a review. It helps us immensely when you do stuff like that. There's a couple different ways you could follow and find me. I'm most active on Twitter at ObjectivelyDan, but you can also sometimes find me posting on the Facebook group. It's the Truth Wanted fan page. It's really, really cool. You should please check that out if you haven't already. And you can also contact me with the email address for the show. It's truth@atheist-community.org. And that's just another way to keep in touch. I am pretty responsive on the emails front. So if you really need to get in touch with me, that's a good way to do it. And of course, I need to thank the lovely, awesome, fantastic, wonderful, amazing, spectacular crew that helps make this show happen every single week. Look at all of those crew members that help make things happen. You may see some of them next week when we release our special awards show, which I am super excited to do, by the way. Very, very fun stuff. Lauren, thanks again for being on. Any final thoughts you want to shout out before we end the show here tonight?
No final thoughts. Thanks so much for having me, and I hope everyone has safe and happy holidays. Happy New Year.
Happy New Year. Fuck it. Merry Christmas. Happy Hanukkah. Yeah. Whatever else you got going on, just be happy, please. Just do what you need to do. All right. And you will see my face next week for our special awards show. So thank you so much, guys. Remember to always keep wanting the truth, and I'll see you in 2021.